Welcome into the Scoop, the number one UNC football recruiting podcast, brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. All right, welcome into the Scoop. I'm your host, Ross Martin. This is the number one UNC football recruiting podcast in the world. As always, I'm joined by Donnie Scoops Callahan. The show is presented to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. What's up, Don?
Not too much. Same old stuff. Things firing back up. Last week was kind of boring because UNC was on spring break, so there wasn't any visits for me. But UNC had a couple of visitors this week. Going to have some visitors this weekend, which will give me plenty to do for the next few days. What about you? You got a little bit of a break also because of spring break and no basketball coverage also. So
Yeah,
what's going on with you?
yeah, basketball team did not make the tournament, so kind of a unexpected in terms of, you know, months ago, a year ago, we thought we'd be here. 6 months ago, I thought I'd be deep into March now, following the team around, and they didn't make the tournament, and they turned down the NIT. So yeah, a little week off, and then we had spring football stuff yesterday, Tuesday, with press conferences for Mac Brown and the two new kind of advisors, um, analysts, Clyde Christensen and Ted Monachino. And then we'll have open practice this Saturday. Are you gonna be at the open practice?
I am, as of right now, I am anticipating being there.
Because I imagine there'll be a lot of recruits there, right? Or some
Yeah,
recruits.
so yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of variables involved in these sort of decisions, but as it stands right now, that's my plan is to go. Can I ask, and I know everyone listening to this already knows this answer, but just really quick, like 2 sentences, what happened to UNC basketball? I didn't watch a single game or full game. I mean, may have caught a couple things here and there.
Yeah, I mean, they were, I think, the second or third team left out of the tournament, so they were right on the bubble. I mean, someone argued they deserved to be in, someone argued they did not deserve to be in. Ultimately, they didn't have any big wins, like any good solid wins. They didn't beat the really good teams. Their best win was probably Virginia. They lost to
Mm-hmm.
Duke twice. Duke was the tournament team. They lost to Miami, which is in the Sweet 16. They lost to Alabama in four overtimes. In Portland, they lost to Iowa State. In Portland, those were two tournament teams. So like the chances they had to get good wins, they didn't win. They didn't have that many bad losses either, but they just didn't have any good wins. And then so the tournament committee, prioritizes quality one win. They're called Q1 wins. And they really didn't have many. Um, they had a tough out of conference schedule. They beat Michigan and Ohio State, but both those teams weren't in the tournament. And ultimately, man, this team couldn't make shots. They couldn't effectively score and close out games. Like they led in some of these games in the second half and just couldn't make shots down the stretch, couldn't close out games, couldn't maintain and extend second half leads. And so those ultimately resulted in I think 13 losses. I think they finished 20 and 13. And that was not enough to get it done. I mean, then you can get into why did they not make shots? Why did they not? Um,
Yeah, I didn't want to go
uh,
so deep, but I was just curious. I don't, as I've laid out multiple times, I'm not a big um basketball fan per se. I do like college basketball. It's just timing wise for me, it just doesn't work to watch it. So I end up cramming the 2 days prior to the tournament for to do. I love March Madness.
mhm.
Cramming to do my bracket. Hey, you a big bracket guy?
I do one or one or two here. Yeah,
Okay.
I did watch a lot of basketball. I know
I
we
did too.
we had brief discussions of getting together.
We did. I invited you over. I never got an answer. You were on the fence because of the distance that you must drive, as if you're going to Mexico. It's not that
Yeah,
far, but
I mean, honestly, I wish I kind of thought about going over to your place earlier in the week and then kind of made plans to do it. I'd made plans Thursday to hang out with some people and watch the games, and then yeah, because once I saw your setup, and I remembered, obviously the multiple TV setup is key for March Madness. I was flipping
yeah.
back and I only have one TV, I was flipping back and forth. But yeah, we'll have to do it some other time. But yeah, I watch a lot of basketball Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I mean, I probably missed a couple games. The night games are tough because they're games that start
Yeah,
at 10:30 or
dude,
10:20.
I ended up sleeping I think maybe every one of those nights. I ended up sleeping up in the man tower, just because what would happen is the last game is over, like almost won. One of my cats would come lay on top of me, and I'm like, I'm pretty comfortable here,
And
and I
so
just go to sleep.
wife just stays downstairs.
Well, I get these comments the next day or whatever. Or sometimes what ends up happening, I'll wake up like 3 o'clock in the morning and be like, I want to go to my bed. And I just hop back in my bed, sort of thing. I mean, she knows, she hears me yelling up here at the TV and all of that. I'm a big TV yeller.
Were you making a couple bets?
I did not. Mostly,
Whoa.
I only basically bet to uh to make it more interesting, so I have a dog in the fight.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I had a bunch
You
of
don't have to
brackets.
justify it. You don't have to. No one
No,
thinks
no,
you're
I'm
a
so
degenerate.
so for the tournament, I mean, I have all these brackets. One of them's with my neighborhood, and so there's a lot of bragging rights. When you're walking down the street later on about this, you're going to hear about it if you have a really bad bracket. One guy just completely tanked. He's going to be hearing about it when I see him. But so there's no need for me to bet because I already have a dog in each of those fights
Yeah.
for the most part.
He's gonna hear when Big Bad Don walks through the
That's
suburbia.
right. I'm gonna be like, man, you don't know your basketball. I don't even watch basketball.
Yeah.
But I crammed. I did cram.
Man,
I'm number one in the neighborhood.
Who was your final four in that bracket?
So I have Houston winning. I have Arizona in the final four. Purdue was in my final four. They're obviously out. And I can't remember.
Well, so was Arizona. You said Arizona, right?
No, Arizona. Alabama. I have Alabama.
Oh, okay.
Alabama, Houston winning, Purdue, and I can't remember who the other team was.
Sorry, yeah, I misheard. Yeah, I had Duke and Kansas, and they both lost. So there is great time. I mean,
I might have had. No, I don't think I had Kansas.
It's my.
I know my other team is. I have 3 Final Four teams left. Can't remember who the one was.
Nice, yeah. I mean, I think it's the best 4 days of sports. Just constant,
yes,
nonstop. From 12 on all 4 days. There's action and some great upsets. All right, we gotta get to the show here first.
Yeah.
What'd you have quickly here? What'd you have for breakfast, Don?
I have. I'm going to have oatmeal.
You haven't had anything yet?
Not yet. Just coffee.
Yeah, because when we were discussing the podcast, I had some breakfast. So I was just curious as to what you had.
What did you have for breakfast?
I had.
This is gonna be something weird.
Yeah,
it's gonna be some like juice, prune juice, and
no, it's not healthy. So I had two cinnamon raisin English muffins.
Okay.
Split in half, kind of warmed up with a little bit of butter. Then I put cream cheese on top. Then I put cinnamon sugar on those. So four halves, So 2 total. Not healthy.
No.
Then I had a juice, a green juice. I have this green juice. I'll grab it right here.
Oh boy.
I'm drinking this now. It's like green juice powder, and you mix it up. Had one of those. I had some tea that I'm drinking right here. Shout out Joe Jalk, former UNC wide receiver. He sent me this mug because I was 500th follower. And then audio's going in and out here on my side.
Yeah.
I had some coffee, and then I had the pizza.
No. Oh wow, that's a big breakfast.
No. But check this out, Don. Me and my special lady friend went to a party, a St. Patrick's Day party on Friday. And there was so much food there. You would have loved it. And at the end, they were like, take all the food you want. We have so much extra pizza, so much extra stuff. And I walked out and there were 3 pizzas. 3 full pizzas. So I have all this pizza in my freezer.
That sounds wonderful.
There you go. All right. So a lot of pizza in my future. All right, let's get into the show, guys. Sorry for that. It's slower time of the year. We got a little off topic there, a little basketball talk. We have probably one of the biggest shows ever ahead of us.
Way to oversell.
We're going to hit on a lot of topics briefly. We're going to call this kind of a rapid fire. We're going to talk about, there's some commitments we've had since the last time we talked. There's some team news coming out of yesterday's press conference. and we're going to touch on some 2024 recruits, the quarterback situation, some of the bigger name recruits, some of the newer names that I didn't recognize. Definitely check out Don's weekly scoops. A lot of this information is kind of generally talked about in some of those there, and then we're going to get into what Don's done the last 2 weeks, which is looking at defensive line, not only the team side of it, but then the recruiting side of it, and then linebacker stuff. Same thing. Don kind of broke down the roster, the depth chart, and then how UNC is recruiting that position for the 2024 class. Sound good, Don?
Sounds great.
All right, so we're going to do this rapid fire, a lot of topics over the next 30, 45 minutes. We'll get out of here. So for those interested in UNC football recruiting, this will be a general overview of a lot of different stuff and the stuff you need to know for 2024 as UNC comes out of a spring break and heads into the remainder of spring practice and recruiting period. First, Don, what is going on right now with UNC football recruiting? Like what in the calendar? What do we expect?
So
just to get set the stage.
So we're in basically, I guess we'll call it the spring visits. The way that the calendar has kind of settled ever since we have the early signing period and the official visits allowed in the summer. Now kids are using these months to take a bunch of visits. They're using their spring break to take a bunch of visits, to see spring practices, those sort of things. And those visits help them determine where they want to officially visit in June, which will obviously a lot of guys will make their decision before the end of the summer. UNC was on spring break last week, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, so they didn't host any visitors. So they began hosting again. I'm not going to mention names, although we could figure it out pretty easily, but there was an offensive lineman on campus that UNC has offered, or a lineman, I'll say, that was on campus. Earlier this week, there'll be a bunch of guys on campus Friday, Saturday, because there's the open practice on Saturday morning. So we're just, basically the visit portion of the calendar, big unofficial visit portion of the calendar.
Okay. And the open practice is obviously Saturday for those who want to go to that, 10 a.m. Open to all fans. I think there's like a certain gate you can go through. We'll be there. Me and Adam, Don may be there. Tommy, who knows? It's fun. It's pretty casual, open to fans and family. It's obviously not going to be very crowded. You'll have plenty of space. Good thing to take the kids to. And with that, let's do a brief spring kind of update here. Malachi Hamrick, UNC. I mean, pretty big time recruit, 4-star recruit, very productive player out of Shelby. He is out for the 2023 season with a non-contact lower body injury that requires surgery. Don, you covered Malachi Hamrick extensively. He was one of UNC's. I was kind of writing the story yesterday. I didn't go back to look, but I think he was one of the first commits out of the 22 class.
Yes. And he committed during when we were still kind of in pandemic sort of time as far as visiting and stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, he was a long-time commit, never wavered, very productive, holds the Shelby sack record. And this obviously affects UNC's depth on the edge. At the jack position. I talked about this last night on the beat, touch on it briefly here. Amari Gaynor, the Florida State transfer, likely starter there. You also have Kamen Rucker, who can play both jack and power end, will be there as well. But beyond those two guys, you would look to Malachi Hamrick as the next guy. Now you have Gabe Stevens, you have two freshmen in Jabron Harvey and Tyler Thompson. I don't think Tyler Thompson will be ready to contribute. I'm not sure about Jabron Harvey. So it does impact depth. Now, I don't think it impacts UNC's defense as a whole. He was probably going to get somewhere between 10 to 20 snaps a game as Rucker and Gaynor split time there. Also yesterday, any addition on that, Don?
No, it's unfortunate. God, that weird thing's happening.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because yeah, great kid. I talked to his mom a lot during his recruitment, and great family. He has a great support system there in Shelby. Great player. But I think the good thing, if there is a good aspect of this, is that he didn't redshirt last year, and so he'll be able to use his redshirt this year. Although even if he redshirted last year, I'm sure the NCAA would have gave him a medical. But he doesn't have to worry about that. He'll redshirt this year, and he'll be much better next year. I imagine that you guys probably don't know exactly what it is, but from what it sounds like, something to do, I guess I probably shouldn't speculate, but I mean, my head does go to where it potentially could be. There's only a few things, lower body, that will keep you out for an entire year that you know already.
Yeah, Dr.
So
Callahan, orthopedic surgeon. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something to do with the knee.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, sucks. I mean, it hurts your development, hurts your growth. You can't lift as much. You lose 9 months of development. Knee injuries can be devastating for football careers. On a positive
yeah.
note there. All right, moving on. We also had Clyde Christensen and Ted Monachino speak to us yesterday. Two NFL veteran coaches added to UNC staff. Clyde Christensen's worked with Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Jameis Winston. Who's the Colts quarterback I'm missing from Stanford? Andrew Luck.
Andrew
I
Luck.
mean, this guy has won Super Bowls with these guys. And he was very impressive. He's coming in as a volunteer assistant to work with the quarterbacks, work with Chip Lindsey on the offensive side of the ball. And then Ted Monachino, also an NFL veteran, worked with numerous high-profile outside linebackers and edge rushers through his NFL career, multiple stops in NFL, both very impressive guys. Ted Monachino is listed as a senior defensive analyst who will be paid, whereas Clyde Christensen's volunteer. And these are just advisors. They can't necessarily coach players on the field during practice or in the game, but they can be voices to the coaching staff in the meeting rooms, listen, watch, make observations, make recommendations, all those good things. Any thoughts on those two moves, just in general, by Coach Mack Brown heading into the 2023 season?
Yeah, so I know that they've had analysts in the past, and obviously there's a lot of teams that have had a gazillion analysts. Nick Saban's always criticized about all the analysts he's had. It's interesting that they made such a, I don't want to say big deal, but they definitely wanted everyone to know that they were making these hires. I thought that was interesting. For my purposes, these guys are not going to be handling much or doing much with recruiting stuff other than the, I guess there was no GAs that you guys were dealing with. So it really doesn't impact where my coverage, my beat, but obviously adding these sort of guys to the staff is only going to help.
Yeah, it's a good point. They definitely made a point to publicize these. I don't think we've ever talked to analysts in an individual press conference. They had a release. They've mentioned it in multiple press conferences, then had a big release for it last week. And I think it's just an indication that Mack's going all in and trying to help, the positions of need, areas of need, as much as he can. I mean, Ted Monachino coming in to work on the pass rush. I mean, he is brought in as a pass rush specialist, working on and helping UNC's edge rushers and jacks, and helping Gene Chizik devise, better schemes and plans to get after the quarterback and be a better defense. So that's a huge thing, and I think it only helped Drake May on the quarterback side with Christensen coming in. Just briefly, UNC also hired or brought in 4 other staff members, kind of younger guys, mostly Ty Greenwood as a defensive analyst, and DB's coach Jamal Lett for special teams, working with Larry Porter. Jay Clements, who is Randy Clements' son, will be an offensive line assistant, assistant coach type situation. And Cam Spence is also coming in.
I remember Spence as a recruit.
Played at Ohio State, right?
Or I thought he played at Maryland.
Played at Maryland. Was at
Ohio State. Yeah.
Yeah. Played at Maryland 2 seasons before medically retiring, and then has been coaching independently. Student assistant at Maryland, worked at Miami and Ohio State before moving on to Chapel Hill. So he's coming in and work with the defensive line. So it helps to have multiple eyes and ears in that room as well. All right, moving on. Don, let's get into the recruiting portion of the show. First, I want to talk to you about Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com, your one-stop shop for all your UNC apparel needs. Right on Franklin Street and online at JohnnyT-Shirt.com. If you're getting UNC stuff, T-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, polos, tailgating gear, gifts, go to Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Remember, all Inside Carolina subscribers get 10% off your order at Johnny T-Shirt with the code found on the 2 premium message boards on Inside Carolina. Great time to join Inside Carolina. Don's recruiting scoop, Sherelle's recruiting intel on the basketball side of things has been unbelievable. I talked about it a lot on the beat last night. Sherelle stuff's been really interesting and really intriguing here as UNC's basketball roster gets figured out and they start delving to the transfer portal. But Don always bringing as well with the weekly scoops and the recruiting news here, especially June and July, right? Big time coming up, football recruiting.
Yeah.
Check it out. Johnny T-shirt, johnnytshirt.com. We'll have a couple national ads. We'll be right back with more of the scoop featuring Donnie Callahan, featuring Donnie Scoops Callahan. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with more scoop rapid fire situation here as we move through, a lot of the 2024 class. All right, Don. Last show we talked about Davion Gaze, running back. Geis.
I think it's Geis.
Bullet Geis.
Yeah. Call him Bullet, I guess.
Yeah. So we talked about him in the last show. He committed to UNC like a couple hours after we wrapped up taping for the show. And then later that night, UNC got a commitment from 2024 athlete Khalil Conley from Christ School. A recruit that I think you expected to at some point commit to UNC. 6 foot, 170, 24/7 Sports, 3-star prospect. Not super high ranked, number 783 in the nation, number 84 athlete, and you expect him to play what, cornerback or nickel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cornerback or nickel. Most likely nickel, but yeah.
Cool, yeah. And from Asheville, from Christ School, briefly go into how his recruitment and commitment happened, him as a player, and we'll move on from there.
So, I mean, basically, North Carolina offered him in January. They really liked him early on. Let me take a step back. The interesting thing with him, which I don't think gets talked about a lot, is that he actually reclassified. It was supposed to be a 2023 prospect. He was a quarterback for a running quarterback basically for Asheville High School. And then basically a year ago, which was heading into his senior season, didn't like the options that he was seeing as far as recruiting was concerned. Him and his dad decided to have him transfer to Christ School, which is just outside of Asheville, and then reclassify, which is an option that some of these private schools do offer to this class. Once he got there, he began as a wide receiver, or he came in as a wide receiver. And then they actually, some of the coaches at Christ School said, hey, let's try this kid out at DB, and eventually ended up starting both ways for Christ School. So he's a guy who kind of fits the mold of what Charlton Warren likes in his DBs, kids who excel on offense, who are playmakers on offense. You look at like Caleb Cost is a great example, that UNC signed with the last class. A big-time baseball player who'll play on the baseball team at UNC, could potentially be drafted also, but also was the leading receiver for his high school, which is one of the better schools in that Atlanta area. That's the same sort of mold that Charlton Warren likes to look at, and what you'll see with Conley is a kid who definitely a very good DB, but he's a great return man. He's also a very good receiver. So he's just a well-rounded, he's just an athlete, a ball player. And Warren likes those sort of guys and then likes to kind of see where they fit in best within his secondary.
So is this a player, did he, just a little background here, he went to public school at Asheville School?
Asheville High School.
Asheville High School, and then I guess kind of got recruited to play for Christ. Is that kind of how it worked?
Well, I don't know if he was recruited. That's like one of those things that these schools like Christ School deal with, that negative, I guess, connotations for them that they got to always battle. From what Khalil told me, it was a decision that him and his father had made.
Okay.
They felt like he was getting some looks. He was playing out of position. He's playing quarterback. He's not a quarterback, but he was getting some looks for quarterback. His best bet probably would have been like a school that runs like the triple option, and there's not a whole lot of those, especially at the high level. And so basically they decided to, hey, let's do this. Let's go to Christ School. Let's reclassify, and let's see what the options are from there, and ended up working out for them. And something that we see actually, Sherelle, I'm sure, could talk about a lot in basketball. Guys reclassifies like crazy. It doesn't happen so much in football, but it does. And this is one of those examples.
Well, reclassifying can happen both ways, right?
Yes, yes.
He
Typically, it happens back though, but yes.
well, I feel like in basketball, some guys reclassify and enroll early, a year
But
early.
yeah, yeah, it happens. But I mean, I think you'd be surprised by when you kind of look back and find out that a lot of these guys are actually a year older than their class.
Yeah, they could have been held back in elementary school or something like that too.
Well, I mean, usually it's actually done on purpose, and
Yeah,
usually nowadays it's actually done before they get to high school. So that they can avoid the issues for and still go to a public school.
yeah, and they're 1 year more physically mature when they get to high
Yes.
school or whenever. So that's the situation here with Khalil Conley. He joins UNC's 2023 class. You don't see many mountain, North Carolina mountain Asheville area recruits join UNC's recruiting class. So it's just good to see an Asheville kid there. And so UNC now has 5 commitments. Khalil Conley, this is in reverse order of their ranking. Khalil Conley, Desmond Jackson, Evan Bennett, Andrew Rosinski, and Davion Gaze.
Gaze.
Guys.
I don't know. And then once I kind of get messed up with it, I don't know.
Yeah, and guess what? Everyone's ranked now.
Yeah, well, 247. They're taking a long time. They finally updated their rankings yesterday. Well, what was today? Tuesday. They updated Tuesday. Today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. We're recording Wednesday morning. Yeah, so everybody complaining that UNC didn't have any ranked, prospects. 24/7 Sports has gone in and ranked everybody. So they at least have a 24/7 Sports ranking, which also gives them a composite ranking. I'm not sure how many different rankings are involved in the composite there, but yeah, you see Evan Bennett now with a ranking, Desmond Jackson's with a ranking, Andrew Rosinski, is ranked 501 in the nation, and then their highest commit is the running back Davion Gaze. We need to figure that out as a 24/7 Sports composite 4-star guy. All right, Don, moving on. The quarterback situation. I want you to give us a brief overview of the situation right now at quarterback. This is something we'll always talk about, the highest profile position for college football. And so that, makes the highest profile position for football recruiting. Obviously, I read some of your scoop, and it talked about Jake Merklinger, the Georgia prospect, visiting UNC and broke down his recruitment a little bit. Can you give us what's going on with UNC's quarterback situation, how you see it breaking down, and then specifically Merklinger, which seems like the guy that UNC is focusing on? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so I think that they had right now there's 3 quarterbacks who have UNC offers who have not committed anywhere, and that's Jake Merklinger, who you mentioned, Jay Davis, who's a quarterback out of Charlotte, we've talked about a bunch. KJ Jackson from Alabama is another guy that he actually visited in January that UNC is recruiting, and Daniel Keelan, who actually visited earlier in the month, he committed to Missouri, and mostly that was because North Carolina hinted at that they could not take his commitment at this point, and that he would have to kind of wait. And this kind of gets to your question, is that they're waiting to see what Merklinger or Jaden Davis wants to do. I think, though, Jaden Davis' situation is back towards trending away from North Carolina towards Michigan. Yeah, he visited Michigan over the weekend. There hasn't been a whole lot. Will Fong did have a story out, but it's just kind of the same generic sort of stuff. Visit went great sort of thing. And it was with Jaden Davis's dad. So you kind of have to, there's not a whole lot there. But Merklinger, he made a major visit this past weekend. Visited Georgia. I feel like there was another visit in there for him too this past weekend. But he has a couple more visits coming up, and then his hope is to make a decision in April. If he doesn't feel right at that point, he'll take some official visits to help him make a decision. But North Carolina feels like not necessarily that they're going to get him, but that they have a good enough chance to where they're willing to wait it out. And if they do miss on him, there's still the outside chance with Jaden Davis, and then you also have KJ Jackson still in there, and they could expand the board if that's necessary too.
So what's going on with Merklinger in terms of his like how he's going through it?
What do you mean?
Like who his top schools? Did you go through that already?
Well, yeah, sorry. So the main schools that he's not a big media guy. But his main schools, so he has not announced like a firm list, but the main schools he's looking at: North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Michigan State, and Virginia Tech.
Okay.
And so you look at that, and it naturally you know, if you're looking at this objectively, you're like, okay, Georgia kid. Georgia won the last two national championships. Tennessee does really well in recruiting Georgia, especially with the way their offense looked last year.
SEC school.
SEC school. Georgia's the heart of SEC country. So, but a lot of people I talk to feel like so Georgia has a quarterback commit already from a kid from Connecticut, 4-star guy. And a lot of people believe that Merklinger does not want to be a part of a 2 quarterback class, and that will exclude or eliminate Georgia. But he's still visiting. And the other aspect of this, that his mom is a Georgia alum. So that factors in a little bit, but they're not, from my understanding, and I don't like hang out with the family, but my feeling is they're not like a huge Bulldog family.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm completely wrong, and he ends up committing to Georgia in like 2 days. Who knows? But yeah, and then with Tennessee, the feeling, just kind of talking to a lot of different people, is they probably a little bit stronger position than Georgia.
Mhm.
Obviously, this visit this past weekend could change any of that. So a lot of these conversations occurred before this weekend. But the deterrent with Tennessee is they signed that Nico Amaliva, who is a 5-star kid who, either famously or infamously, depending on how you see it, signed this massive NIL deal. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of pressure to play that kid, regardless of how good or bad he is, just because of the money that's involved there. So actually, a lot of people say, hey, don't discount Michigan State. He's going to visit. He has a visit scheduled to Michigan State, I think, in like a week or so. I don't have it in front of me, but he's already been there like 5 times, which is a lot considering he's a Georgia kid going up to Michigan State. I believe he has some family up there, which is what the connection is. And if you look at what Michigan State has done the past couple of years, they've recruited really well, and a lot of it is because they have really done a great job with handling the NIL stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Former UNC offensive line coach
Cap.
Coach Cap is up there. But they've done well. They didn't do so well in the field last year, but they've done well recruiting wise, though.
Yeah. Okay, a lot of information there. Jake Merklinger. Let me go through his bio. 6 foot 2.5, 195. High rank kid, 24/7 Sports Composite, 4-star kid, number 55 in the nation, number 6 quarterback, number 9 Georgia recruit. And those quickly here, it's between him, Jaden Davis, KJ Jackson. Were those the top 3?
Yeah, those are only 3
realistic targets right now.
Those are the 3 that have UNC offers who have not committed anywhere else.
Okay. And so it seems like Merklinger UNC is doing the best with. He's a high ranked guy, and there's mutual interest there as well. So certainly something to watch.
I think, I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Go ahead.
Where do you think Merklinger ends up committing?
I don't know. I really think it could go any 4 directions. A lot of people are kind of eliminating Georgia, but I don't see how you can do that realistically. A kid from Georgia, he's still visiting Georgia. I get the fact that they have something to overcome. Those things can easily be overcome with some good recruiting, good persuading. You easily say to the kid, hey, this kid's from Connecticut, you're from Georgia. If all things are equal, who are we playing? We're playing a kid from Georgia. So you can easily kind of talk him and his family into being more comfortable. The other thing with Georgia is that their depth chart many people believe will open up because they're having a quarterback competition right now. Mm-hmm. And that once that begins to settle, I was talking to Rusty Manziel, who covers Georgia for 247 Sports, and he anticipates that they'll probably lose one guy to the transfer portal after the spring, and as the quarterback battle continues, they'll probably lose another, and that would leave them, I think, with just 2 scholarship quarterbacks, which leaves a lot of opportunity there for whoever is signing, even if it is part of a two quarterback class. Which if you lay that out and you're a really good salesman, and Georgia has a really good recruiting staff, all that's to say is that I don't know. This kid could. It wouldn't shock me if he goes to North Carolina. It wouldn't shock me if tomorrow there is a tweet out that he's committed to Georgia, and it wouldn't shock me with Michigan State or Tennessee either.
Yeah, the Georgia guy that's committed, Ryan Puglisi from Avon Old Farms in Connecticut. I mean, Merklinger's ranked higher than him. Not that rankings matter that much, especially talking 144 versus 50 range. But interesting breakdown there. Good perspective from Don as always on UNC's quarterback situation and Merklinger's recruiting situation there. So certainly something to follow there as UNC pursues its quarterback commitment for the 24 class. All right, moving on here, Don. I'm going to give you 4 names. I want a brief, couple lines on each guy. It's kind of as an update. I think there's a couple intriguing names here that we need updates on. Okay.
Yes.
Rapid fire. All right, Jonathan Paylor from Alamance County, Burlington Cummings, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's going on with him right now? There was a brief scoop on him in one of your scoops from last week.
Yeah, so we read a story on him following his visit to North Carolina earlier this month. In that, and this you have in your notes, is that he does not intend on taking official visits to nearby schools.
Yes.
And so the one thing that I've mentioned is that we don't have a whole lot of theorems or proof, laws of recruiting that we could follow just because of the nature of it. But it's not foolproof whatsoever, but one of the things that I always lean on is the official visit. If a kid doesn't officially visit a school, I don't know what the odds are, but they're significantly lower that the kid does not end up at the school. Okay, and I've been doing this a long time. There's tons of kids fall into Paylor's situation where they say, local school, no need to take an official visit. And one or two things happen. They either somehow something happens and they end up taking that official to the school, or they don't end up at that school. And other than the COVID year where visits were not permitted, there have only been 2 guys that I've covered that signed with North Carolina who did not take an official visit. One of those is Chaz Surratt, and if you remember, he had planned on playing basketball his senior season, so he didn't take his official visit earlier in the season, but he had hurt his arm in December, and since he couldn't play basketball, he decided the last minute to enroll early, and that's why he didn't take his official visit.
Yes.
The other one is Delvon Simmons. Do you remember Delvon Simmons? Was this probably before your time covering, correct?
Do not remember him yet.
Okay, so he was a defensive lineman, 4-star defensive lineman. This was a John Blake recruit. Took a couple of visits to North Carolina, liked it. There was another D lineman at the school too. Again, from Pennsylvania. Took official visits to 5 other schools. Came down to his recruitment, just didn't like them, and ended up liking North Carolina. Signed with North Carolina. Did not end up at North Carolina. So those are the circumstances we're looking at. Otherwise, everyone else has taken official visit to North Carolina at some point. So all that's to say, official visit is important.
And Jonathan Paylor is decided. I mean, this is not. He could end up changing it, right?
Yeah.
I
expect him to change this.
Really? Okay. So he has told you that right now UNC is not on his official visit list.
He is dead. Yeah, North Carolina, NC State, and I think also South Carolina. He actually has an official schedule with South Carolina. So it's just North Carolina, NC State. Now, North Carolina.
Wait. Go say that again. What did you say? Which schools have official visits?
So he has scheduled. Let me pull this up to give it. He has scheduled official visits with Clemson and South Carolina. So he has scheduled Clemson on the weekend of June 2nd. South Carolina has that last official visit June 23rd. And he anticipates giving the other official visits to Alabama, Colorado, and I can't remember I think the other one is Florida, I think. I think that's what it is. But he does not, at this moment, does not intend on giving officials at NC State, North Carolina.
Okay.
If that holds, North Carolina plans on having some sort of unofficial visit that's basically like an official visit. It won't cost him all that much because he lives how far is Burlington from Chapel Hill? Is
30
it
minutes.
30 minutes. And he can go home if he really wanted to, but I'm sure they'll pay for the hotel, whatever. Now, I talked to some people close to him. They don't think he's going to go very far. They think he's going to stay in the Carolinas, whether that be South Carolina or North Carolina. And so, he more than likely will decide, hey, that's the case. So let me use these officials on NC State, North Carolina. And so that's kind of what I think. But,
instead of Colorado, Florida.
Yeah. I mean, he's never been on an airplane before. So you're going to tell me, I mean, strange things happen. We're dealing with high school kids. They make irrational decisions all the time. We see it every single year. Yeah. But it wouldn't make logical sense for a kid who's never been on an airplane, for a kid who hasn't been able to travel. He goes to places all the time, but hasn't been able to travel really far, to all of a sudden go to school in Colorado. Even Alabama's would be really far for him to go to school. And that's what a lot of the people who are close to him say, hey, this is not a kid who, at the end of the day, it would make a whole lot of sense for him to go too far away from family.
Whew, you're bringing it. You brought it on Paler. That was good.
So much for a quick hitter.
Yeah, 5'9", 170, 24/7 Sports Composite, 4-star kid, 173 in the nation, 14 ranked athlete, number 3 ranked prospect in the state of North Carolina. Quickly, Don, I mean, you have it here: South Carolina, Alabama, Clemson, NC State, and North Carolina, all with warm or favorite. South Carolina is listed as a favorite. Why is South Carolina why does he like them so much? What's going on there? Briefly.
So I asked him about it, and he says they've been recruiting him really hard, harder than any other school.
Okay.
So
they got a little momentum. I think
they have a ton of momentum. They're doing really well on the recruiting trail. I know UNC fans are probably like, what is going on here? This doesn't make any sense. They're an SEC school. Beamer has a lot of. He has the momentum that Mack Brown had a couple years ago. Beamer has a lot of that now.
And he's young, hip.
Yep. Does all the corny things on Twitter.
I think Beamer is the kind of coach that, little tangent here. Beamer's kind of coach I think UNC needs in its next coach. A young 40s, kind of understands the world of, the new world of not just social media, because that's not as important, but just like a younger guy can relate to the new, young, up-and-coming alums. He's not some dinosaur, and Beamer, I believe, was a special teams guy, kind of more of the CEO, obviously, as well. I think that could be kind of the target that UNC should go after if that exists out there. Very likable, it seems. I don't know. I've really liked Beamer. What's his first name?
Shane.
Yeah. Odd name. I'd never name my kids Shane. All due respect. All
due respect.
All right.
You didn't like Tad either.
That name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tad. That's kind of like a
when
modern...
you're gonna have kids. That's the bigger question, not what you're gonna name them.
God only knows. I'm gonna name my first son Rivers.
You should name it Don.
Don's a solid name. Name him after our president, our former president.
Okay.
Actually, stop there. We can't get into politics.
Yeah, we get a lot of messages. Yeah. Anyway.
All right, moving on. Okay, next name. Ready?
Yeah, I'll be quicker with this one.
All right, Zion Ferguson. Now, we have not talked about him to my knowledge, but I've been seeing his name pop up a lot. 6 foot, 161 from Gainesville, Georgia. 24/7 Sports Composite, 4-star prospect, 296 in the nation, 22 ranked cornerback, 38 ranked player in Georgia. Now, he is a LSU commit. Don?
Yes.
What's going on?
Yes. So he took a gazillion visits. He took a lot of visits last offseason and then committed to LSU in September. And to the best of my knowledge, did not make any visits all last season. And then he visits North Carolina earlier this year. That visit, you know what you got to get if you went on that visit to North Carolina?
When was this?
This was earlier this month.
It was the Duke game?
The Duke basketball game.
Yeah.
So, his family, his grandmother lives in Durham. Family are actually they're Duke fans. So you can imagine that that had to play a big factor. As far as I know, he has not visited anywhere else besides North Carolina, and he went back to LSU last weekend. He was in my conversation with him. He was non-committal, really. I should say non-committal. He would not. He kind of danced around the question about whether he would return to North Carolina unofficially or officially. But from my understanding, he was a little bit more firm with intentions on getting back to North Carolina when he spoke to UNC's coaches. I just kind of until he schedules an official visit, I still am in the group that believes that he only took that visit so he can get a free ticket to the UNC Duke basketball game. I'm sure he loved it. But you can go and see grandmom, go bring a couple family members to a UNC Duke basketball game, and then explain to LSU, hey, look, they gave me free tickets to UNC Duke. And I returned to your campus a week later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
he's wearing a UNC old school kind of jacket in the photo you have of him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a kind of odd deal. He's visited UNC a bunch and LSU commitment. Anywhere else he's visited?
So he's only all right. So as far as I know, since committing to LSU, he's only visited North Carolina, and that's it. Just that one time this past earlier this month.
Okay, I see him with tweeted an offer from Arizona.
Yeah,
with him with an Arizona flag and jersey. Odd.
Yeah, right. I don't know if that was a reason. I don't believe that's a recent visit, but it could be.
Okay. All right, moving on. I don't even know if this guy's worth talking about. Brody Barnhart. I don't know why. It's so funny. Why did I write that down? I mean,
well, first question. Would you name your kid Brody?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And look, I'll say this, naming a kid is a two-way decision. It's not your own decision. You have to check with your spouse or partner.
That's right. That's probably one of the most difficult decisions. Anyone who's ever gone through that.
Naming your kid?
Yeah, we got threatened that we were going to have to stay in the hospital for an extra night if we didn't have a name by noon.
This is your son?
No, my
daughter. What'd you name her?
Brianna Lynn Callahan.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Anyway,
now one of the best. Now one of the best women's basketball players in suburbia.
She's starting on the JV lacrosse team now.
Let's go.
Sport she barely plays.
She got all her athleticism from her father.
I don't think so. Anyway, so the reason why you have him on there because he came out with a top 3 in December, which was Virginia Tech, West Virginia, and NC State. Obviously, North Carolina is excluded. He's another one who visited for that basketball game, the UNC Duke basketball game. I think this is a little bit different of a situation. I think he has a legitimate interest in North Carolina. I anticipate him coming back, but I do think that there are other schools that are ahead of UNC because of I think his personality kind of fits some of these other schools. I mean, you look at them, the Virginia Tech, NC State, West Virginia. Those are schools, their atmospheres, their fan bases, those sort of things kind of, I mean, am I wrong in saying that those schools kind of match in a way?
Yeah. West Virginia, Virginia Tech, State, yeah. 6-foot safety, 180 pounds out of Providence Day School in Charlotte. A safety target, 24/7 Sports Composite 3-star kid. Yeah, I just wrote his name down. I thought it was interesting.
The most interesting. So his team has Jaden Davis, 5-star.
Yes.
2 receivers that are 4-star, Channing Goodwin and Jordan Chip. Has and those are 24 kids. It has a 25, David Sanders, who's a 5-star. We have him. I don't know. We have him as the number 1 player in the 2025 class. But I'll tell you this, and I believe his head coach would agree with me. Brody's a way better high school player than all those guys.
Really?
And it wouldn't surprise me if he just doesn't have the measurables that those guys have. But it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up having, the rankings would suggest he would have the worst career compared to those other guys. I expect him to have better career than at least a couple of them. I don't know which ones, but he's just one of those work hard over, overachiever sort of kids.
Okay. All right, let's move on. As we kind of close out this show, your last two weekly scoops have focused on different position groups. And so I want you to we'll briefly go through them and kind of close out this show. I'm gonna pull them up here. You've been doing this, off and on here for, I guess, the last couple of months, is looking at a position, and then looking at where UNC is depth chart wise, and then how many they're going to add potentially in the 24 class, and then what are the key names there. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with defensive line. All right.
All right. I'm ready.
Pulling it up here. So, and this includes jacks, power ends, and interior linemen. How do you want to go about this? I mean, there's just the
well,
charts,
let me. All right. So why don't we?
Me.
Yeah. So, I did a really quick sort of. I don't know the team as well as you do, and so I kind of just laid out the scholarship situation. From what you've seen, what does the defensive line look like? What did you? I mean, you saw all practice. I mean, give me. All right, who do you think the starters are going to be? Let's start there.
Probably Kevin Hester, Miles Murphy in the interior. On the edge, probably I would say Desmond Evans. Oh, probably Javari Ritzy. And then Amari Gainer. Now I could see Travis Shaw splitting time equally with Kevin Hester. And I could see Desmond Evans splitting time equally with Javari Ritzy. I could also see Ritzy moving inside some as well to the 3 technique. And then Tamari Fox, kind of the wild card there. News out of yesterday was Tamari Fox is healthy and a full participant now. And then Kamen Rucker. I mean, he can play end and he can play. So those are the names there. The names are the 2 deep: Gainer, Rucker, Evans, Ritzy. Probably something like Fox and Murphy, and then Hester and Shaw.
So if you read Inside Carolina's message board, there's a lot of critiques of the defensive line play. Do you think it improves? Because what you're naming there, a lot of players that we know pretty well who have some potential.
I think it should improve with everyone I mentioned. As 2 or 3 years experience, they're adding in a new coach in Ted Monachino. Everyone's more experienced. A couple guys coming off injuries. And I think big thing is Travis Shaw, year 2 in the middle there, along with more experience with Murphy and Ritzy and Evans, who are coming off, either multiple years or full years as starters.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So, recruiting wise, I think this can go in a lot of different directions. I would have, if I had to put together a mock class today, I would have probably the most difficulty with the defensive line.
Okay.
Because there's just a lot of guys who've only made like a single visit to North Carolina. And a lot of those have been very, very positive feedbacks sort of thing. And so you'd want to see who's going to return, who's going to give an official visit. A lot of these guys have basically said they're going to return for official visits. DeAndre Cook is a name to remember. Of course, Caden Jones, who most schools recruit him as a linebacker, but UNC likes him at the jack position. He's one of the few jacks that UNC is really kind of pursuing, just because they feel like they like the depth there at the jack position. Cole Mullins hasn't visited yet, but UNC likes him a lot. He's another jack guy, but could play linebacker, could play. He's more of like a jumbo athlete is a term that we don't use too much anymore, but used to be used way back. Peter Pazanski is a kid that we wrote about, I believe, earlier in the week. A kid from Florida, but has lived all over the country, including Northern Virginia, and is actually most of the schools he's looking at are in North Carolina. So UNC has a great shot with him, I think.
Okay. First, let's go to this. How many do you think they take? We're just listing these names, the games I've never heard of. Let's go briefly, and then we'll kind of get out of this. I don't know if this segment is evolving the way we thought it.
It's not holding
Yeah,
your
well, it's two different things.
concentration.
We're talking about depth chart, and then we're talking about recruits. So, how many do you think UNC takes in the 2024 class? I mean, jacks. How many jacks? Then how many? I guess power ends and how many interior linemen? We're talking about three different positions here.
So I think that UNC has signed 4 D linemen in the past 3 classes. I think that's a pretty good number to kind of use as your basis. And I think that now that does not include I'll include the jack position with that. So I think that's a good number, give or take, situations dependent. I don't think that they are super like they really want a jack, you know what I mean? But obviously they love what's his name? I just mentioned Caden Jones. And that Mullins kid who I mentioned. They really like those guys. And so obviously if they can land them, they'll take them, sort of thing. But I think if they miss on them and another, elite jack doesn't kind of appear, they'll be comfortable not taking any. But obviously they need some interior D linemen and power ends. And so I think 4 is a good number to kind of focus in on.
Okay, so potentially 1 jack, and if not, at least 1 power end, 1 interior, and then probably, maybe a power end that could grow into an interior type situation.
The other thing I'm going to throw out there, well, I'll just leave it. I'll leave it. I have not reported it yet, and I don't want, okay.
Okay, so defensive line is confusing to kind of figure out right now. They're not really leading, I would say, for any of these guys. Is that fair? Like, they're not really deeply in on any of these targets.
Yeah, I think that the issue, like, there's been a lot of positive feedback, but most of that positive feedback has been from guys who have only visited once. And I'm a big, watching the visit sort of person. And so I want to see a second visit to kind of get a feel.
Okay. Let's move on to the linebackers. I think this is a little bit more a little clearer here.
Yeah, no, this is definitely very clear.
So the depth chart thing. I mean, I think what's important here is that I kind of just I didn't not know this, but Patrick Gray had 4 seasons of eligibility. I mean, people were thinking he could leave after last year, after a big 2022 season. He's obviously back for 23. He'd come back for 24 because of the COVID year.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a situation where everybody on the roster could stay for at least 2 more years. So not lose anybody for potentially only 2 seasons, which is why they're only going to only take 2 in this class?
So they have 1 committed, Evan Bennett, which you talked about already. If that was the only one that they signed, they'd be fine with it. And the reason being is that they have 5 guys who head into this season with 3 or more years of eligibility remaining. So that's pretty good depth for basically 2 positions. Okay. If the 2 guys who don't fall in that category are Cedric Gray and Power Echols, who both have, will have an extra year if they wanted it after this season. If either one of them leave, they're starters. So where's a good spot for you to go? The transfer portal. You're supposed to say it's transfer portal.
Oh, well, I was thinking the opposite. Like, some of these kids might leave for the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a possibility too. But I think what is looking like is like, let's just take this position. If North Carolina loses Gray or Echols, I think they will definitely look heavy into the transfer portal for those guys. But if they were to lose 2 underclassmen, I think that they would just try to fill those scholarships with high school kids, if that makes sense.
Okay. And the 2 targets they have remaining, Cruz Law out of Nashville, Tennessee, and Ashton Woods. Look at these names, man. There's out of Central Casting for high school linebackers, out of Ashton Woods out of Marietta, Georgia, along with the already committed Evan Bennett. You think they're going to take 1, maybe 2?
I think
they definitely would
they
take
could
2,
take
right?
1, they could take 2, they could take 3. I think that if Cruz Law wanted to commit and Ashton Woods wanted to commit, North Carolina would take both of those guys. If one of them, they would take 1. If neither one of them, barring something happening with the roster, they would be fine with just Evan Bennett, if that makes sense.
Must really like Evan Bennett.
They must. He got actually, I think 247 gave him a surprisingly high. Let's see.
Just to take him so early, you know, knowing they're only going to take potentially one or two.
247 gave him an 87 rating, which is, I don't know if I would have gone that high. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but you know.
Yeah. God, my hair is so freaking high today. Okay. Cruz Law, Ashton Woods, anything about those guys? I mean, Cruz Law.
Speaking of hair, these linebackers, all three of them have great hair. I
Yeah.
just want to point that out.
Yeah. Anything to know about these guys in particular? I mean, Cruz Law, I've seen his name a bunch. I mean, it's
Yeah, so Cruz Law has developed a pretty good relationship with Evan Bennett because they have coincidentally visited North Carolina on each of their visits. I think three times have all been together, even though they don't know each other beforehand. So they developed a relationship. Ashton Woods has visited North Carolina 4 times, which I think is significant. Woods has already scheduled his official visit to UNC. Law intends on scheduling one also. So, I don't know if I would say that North Carolina will land both, but UNC has a really good chance with both kids.
okay. Good stuff. Yeah, those names are great. Cruz Law. I mean, it's either like fraternity names or, middle linebackers from the South. Cruz Law, Ashton Woods. All right. That's
All right.
That's the analysis you get here on the Scoop Podcast, guys. I know that was a little bit all over the place. That's kind of how it is, man. There's not one specific thing we had to talk about today. It was just kind of putting together a lot of different ideas, and some segments, maybe not our best. Some segments were great. I thought some really good talk there on Paylor and Merklinger, as we kind of figure out the 24 class. And look, there's not a lot of going on in 24 class right now. They have 5 commitments. There's not a lot of momentum. We're not expecting some big decision coming out here. So that's kind of what you get. We'll be back in 2 more weeks with more of the Scoop here featuring Don Callahan. Anything else to add, Don, before we get out of here?
Nope.
All right, guys. Enjoy the basketball this weekend, and we will talk to you next time.